Town Council meeting of June 19th, 2018. Please rise. And will former Mayor Joan Feinstein of Rybrook lead us in the pledge? There's a flag.
There's a flag right there.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing, please. Heavenly Father, bless this assemblage. Grant us the wisdom to make every decision fair-minded and in the best interest for all its residents. Amen.
A roll call, please. Hope? Where's Hope? Oh, on that side, okay.
Councilperson Lindsay Jackson. Do I have to press this or no?
No.
Okay. Councilperson Lindsay Jackson.
Here.
Councilperson Thomas Nardi.
Here.
Councilperson Jill Axelrod.
Here.
Councilperson Anthony Baxter.
Here.
And Supervisor Gary Zuckerman.
Here. Let's jump first to adoption of the minutes. Excuse me, we're going to jump a little bit out of order tonight. We have two sets of minutes, May 17th and the special meeting of June 13th. If there are no objections or corrections, may I have a motion and a second to pass both of them?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have two public hearings tonight. The Town of Rise Community Development Block Grant application. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Yep. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Debbie, do you want to just tell us what this is about and what we're doing? And then we will move the resolution up to that point.
So the town of Rye has joined the Westchester Urban Consortium, which is now going to be administering the Community Development Block Grant Program on behalf of the communities of our county. As part of that program, we are planning 3 applications, which will be submitted at the end of June, June 27th, I believe. Could be June 29th. 2 of them are for Rye Town Park. All 3 of them are focused on accessibility modifications to enable us to meet the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act and to facilitate the full participation of people with disabilities in all of the town's programs and facilities. So the 2 programs at Rye Town Park, we are applying for funds to enable us to replace the ramps by which people gain access to the beach. And we are applying to create, to modify the bathhouse so that the permit office, the park director's offices, and the bathrooms will be accessible to people with disabilities. Currently, we are not in compliance, and this is an extremely high priority of the towns. In addition, at Crawford Park, there are a number of modifications that would be most helpful, including an evacuation chair to enable people who are on the second floor to escape the building in an emergency, and other permanent installations such as a whiteboard in the room where we're planning on having tutoring go on. Also the need for paths, entrances and exits that are accessible. So those are the modifications that are planned for Crawford. As you know, we have been on an extended project to make that property accessible. We've completed a handicap accessible bathrooms in the picnic pavilion. We've installed a sensory garden and an ADA, a universal access playground, which has been enormously successful. And the fourth phase of our project is now the renovation of Crawford Mansion and the conversion of that into Crawford Community Center. And this is a major part of that project.
Thank you.
Debbie, can I just ask one question, and I'm sorry to, when you mentioned in the Crawford Mansion, the whiteboard, is that gonna be a smart board or just a regular whiteboard?
I think the idea is a smart board, but
Okay.
the details of that have not, we've got the concept in mind, but it would be the kind of teaching tool that schools are using.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that it was. I
No, it's-
remember when I was a student here, I wanna say like a few years ago, they just came up with the smart boards, and we were one of the first schools to have them. They're really great, so
All right,
I
good.
would suggest it or recommend it.
Thanks, Debbie. Since this is a public hearing, do any members of the public wish to speak? Hearing none. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. I'd like to, since we're on this topic, we have three separate resolutions. As Debbie described, resolution to authorize the grant application for the beach access ramps. May I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may please call the roll, Hope?
Councilperson Jackson,
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckman.
Yes. Next resolution is authorizing a grant application for a bathhouse interior, to make the bathhouse interior ADA compliant. May I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Councilperson Jackson,
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes. And the third one is a resolution to authorize a grant application for handicap accessible modifications to the Crawford Community Center and Park. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may I please call the roll?
Councilperson Jackson,
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes. The next public hearing is for local law 2 and actually the accompanying resolutions to authorize a charitable gifts reserve fund tax credit pursuant to real property tax law 980. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, as most of you are aware, the Congress passed in 2016, and the President signed a law that eliminated state and local tax deductions in any amount over $10,000. The state of New York has sought through the mechanism that that is before us to create charitable reserve funds so that the residents and taxpayers can make payments to that reserve fund rather than directly to the taxing authority for taxes, and thereby claim a charitable deduction. That is the theory. I am not going to make any comment as to whether or not that will work. This is a mechanism that the state has set up. The IRS has yet to pass on it. My view, personally, is that since the state has taken the time to set up this framework, that we, as responsible elected officials, should set up our framework in which our residents who so choose to do so can make a charitable gift and take the deduction on their federal income tax. This does not affect the state income tax return, which has been handled separately. What is before us is a local law to authorize a charitable fund reserve fund tax credit pursuant to the tax law, and also a resolution to actually create the charitable fund reserve. And I'm going to leave that up to the controller of the town of Rye to figure out how to do that physically.
Have fun.
Since it is my understanding that the state has not yet set up any codes against which to deposit the fund. Anyway, that's my view. I was actually at the Village of Portchester last night. Mayor Falanka asked me to speak about it. I don't claim any knowledge beyond what everybody else possibly has, but as I say, this is a mechanism that the state has set up that we can take advantage of, and I think that as responsible elected officials, it's the prudent course to at least set up the framework for any possible deductions. I've said my piece. Does anybody else wish to comment?
Gary?
Lindsay?
Yes, I'm just looking at the legislation itself, and I don't know if I have the final copy, but in my copy under B, the second to last line, it says credit against their capital T
I
real
know.
property.
I have
Okay.
that outlined also.
Okay.
I was going to get to that when we do the resolution.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, thank you for pointing it out. I saw it myself. On the
second
reserve
grade.
fund tax credit, B, there's a capital T. That should not be there. Okay. Do any members of the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. Now we have a couple of items to vote on. The first item is the resolution establishing a Town of Rye Charitable Reserve Fund. And this actually establishes the fund. It's done by resolution and not by local law. And in this, I'm looking at the wrong one. Basically, this is the provision to establish the reserve fund, as I just mentioned, and the receiver of taxes, and the controller will figure out the mechanism by which that is accomplished. May I have a motion and a second on the resolution to establish a charitable gift reserve fund?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Any questions? If not, please call the roll, Hope.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. The next item is a resolution approving and adopting the local law to authorize the adoption of the real property tax credit. The local law is what Councilwoman Jackson pointed out there's a typo in, which Debbie, I guess you have by now corrected. And we have a resolution to approve the local law. And I'd like, there should be an amendment. Jeff, because the town council has now established a charitable gifts reserve fund, we need to cross out, Debbie, or shall establish a charitable gifts reserve fund.
Which we're at, please?
On the second whereas the town council has previously established a charitable gifts reserve fund. Okay, cross out or shall establish. Okay, agreed? May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilperson Jackson,
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes, thank you. Now, we're going to move over the presentation right now. We would go to the resolution designating a reassessment company. Should that be revaluation company instead? Jeff, I think we would prefer the term revaluation company.
Okay.
We have a task force recommendation. Just to go back, we established a task force on assessment practices and procedures way back in 2016, and one of its members, Joan Feinstein, is here with us tonight. The task force has recommended that we approve one of the firms that applied and submitted an application to be a reval firm. Joan, do you want to say anything? It's up to you. You're sitting here nice and demurely.
I have a very detailed memo,
We do.
yeah, so you could really read from the memo, you know, unless you want me to go up there.
That's up to you entirely, because the memo is so long, I'm not going to read from it.
You
It
want me
is
to just
4 pages
highlight it?
long.
Why don't
Would you
I
like to
highlight
highlight it?
Since
I
I
would
wrote
really
it.
appreciate it. Since you wrote it, you can highlight it.
Highlight it.
And for the record,
Of course, I
the
can't read my,
for the record, the memorandum with very pretty pictures is in our packet and is available to the public.
John, do you want this instead? This is
yeah, that would be better, actually,
There you go.
since I'm reading. Thank you. Thank you, I can read this better. As Supervisor Zuckerman stated, the task force was established in 2016. It consists of 5 members. The chair of our committee is Dan Tartaglia from Rybrook, myself from Rybrook, Richard Cuddy from Portchester, Randy Rabinowitz from Rhinebeck, and Marcia Rogel from Rybrook. We have met approximately 25 times over the last 2.5 years. It might be closer to 30 times. For the first 2 years of our process, we were really looking to learn about the reassessment process, understand the computerized models that are involved, the technology, and the entire process itself. We knew that there was going to be a reassessment or a revaluation, to me they're the same, that was going to be engaged by the town of Rye, and that we needed knowledge so that we could be comfortable for making recommendations to this town council. What happened in the beginning of 2018, we realized that we needed an assistance from a more professional individual, and let me backtrack. Chief of Staff Debbie Reisner attended almost all of our meetings, actually 99.9% of our meetings. And also Denise Knauer, who is the assessor, also attended, I'd say, the majority of our meetings as well. But we felt that we needed somebody to assist us in actually putting together the RFP. So what we did is we put out a request for qualifications for a consultant to assist us in the revaluation process, and in particular the RFP. And in March or April, Edie McCarthy, who is presently the town assessor for the town of Greenberg, was hired and worked with our committee to work on the RFP. She's very knowledgeable, has lots of experience, and does consulting on the side, which is not unusual for assessors, we've found out. So we put together an RFP to engage in a reassessment of the entire town of Rye. The last undertaking took place in 2011, so we're talking about 7 years ago. The committee realized, in going through depth, that when we look at the assessment process, there is more work to be done with respect to the commercial properties as opposed to the residential properties. We call the residential properties, we thought were more in line per se, but the commercial, we felt there may be more outliers. That's when, in fact, the assessment does not meet where the fair market value and the assessment are maybe too far apart. And that's why you do a reval or reassessment every few years to get things together. But we weren't sure whether or not we needed to do a reval for 2019 or 2020. We knew that we had time constraints to do a 2019 because in order to do a reval, you have to have everything in place by next March so that letters can go out to the public because, as we know, the tentative roll is set May 1st, and then you have, today happens to be grievance day. Proposals came in with respect, so the request for proposal was actually put out in the alternative, either a 2019 proposal, which would be a full interior inspections of commercial properties, but a more limited scope with respect to residential. So we had companies who wanted to respond to our RFP do either 2019, 2020, and we would look at it. So the proposals came in, and there were 3 companies that bid. One company was not responsive to the RFP, and I'm really not responsive to the RFP, and we put that aside. Then it came down to 2 other companies, both who had excellent qualifications, are well known in the industry. But the committee made a twofold recommendation that's set forth in the memo to the Rye Town Council, which is twofold. We're recommending a 2020 revaluation. And the reason we're recommending it is we feel that there may be some time constraints between now and March 1st. And we also felt that the residential, that once you do a reval, it helps you in the years to come because you're testing as well. And we felt that a more intensive process for both commercial and residential would be in the best interest of the town. There was a cost differential between 2019 and 2020 with our preferred vendor, Tyler Technologies, but we felt for the additional $182,000 between a 2019 or 2020 by Tyler, we would get a much better product. We don't want to be short-sighted at all because this revaluation is going to be with you. It could be as many as 8, 9, 10 years. The reason the committee decided to recommend Tyler Technologies for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was the lowest bidder. It came in at $942,000 as opposed to the other applicant, which was Gar Associates at over $1.2 million. We certainly know that Tyler Technologies has substantial experience in performing reassessments in Westchester and has undergone assessments in many large communities. The project team has extensive experience, and one of its commercial appraisers is considered to be an expert. It has a detailed understanding of the town's assessment office. It has strong financial statements. Its training program is quite strong. And the cost of assessing what we call unique properties, those that do not exactly fit the mold, there was no additional cost for that, whereas in the other one there would be. And the annual maintenance costs are also reasonable. We feel that Tyler Technologies is an outstanding organization. It has the experience, and we'll do this on a very timely basis. Once again, we're talking about a 2020 2020 reassessment. And this was the unanimous recommendation of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Very much appreciated. I have to tell you that the work of the assessment task force in the last 2.5 years has really been outstanding. A lot of great recommendations, and this particular report was extremely well written and very comprehensive. And thank you so much. I'd like to point out one other thing, that our estimate for the cost of the reval contract was $1 million, and that's what was allowed in our bond. And so the contract actually came in slightly less than that, which we are very happy about. So that is a good thing. The resolution in front of you to enter into a contract with Tyler in front of the council now. May I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion? There must be discussion on this one. Any discussion?
Well, I just want to thank Mayor Feinstein and all the members that have served on the assessment review task force. You guys are volunteers and have done a phenomenal job, and we're so grateful for your help. It's truly appreciated. You take time away from your families, your hobbies and everything to serve the community. It's greatly appreciated. And I'm also excited about having a commercial expert be involved in the process. I think that's something that the town can greatly benefit from. And look forward to the revaluation.
I don't know if looking forward to it is really the right word.
I feel prepared as it's coming, or less unprepared.
All right, any further comment? Nope. Okay, then please call the roll.
Councilperson Jackson?
Yes.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all. We go back up to the top of our agenda, and we have an ecosystem analysis for Crawford Park by Trevor Hall, our arborist representative. Thank you for coming. Debbie, you want to do the introductions in the background?
Yes, I think, may I ask Greg to do the introduction while we plug Trevor in? Surprise!
How are you? You got it, Trevor. This is good.
Yeah, well, we'll sit you up here, and let's see what we got in terms of, what do you need to plug in? Is there a way to plug you in? What kind of?
Thank you. That always happens. Me too. It's like, wow.
You understand that, right?
Yeah. Oh. Things just
I think we need to sit up there.
Oh, could be.
I think.
Oh, wow. I was wondering where the board was.
Oh,
I
gosh.
didn't notice.
Are we in the way as well? No.
Trevor, you put some. Something nice together. They all have copies.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hello.
So last year we worked to help get a grant together for doing an inventory through the DEC's Urban Forestry Program. We'd done a similar one for Rytown Park, and the gist of the reason to go with an inventory is to give an overall management plan. There's numerous benefits, but the main thing is you can't really address what you have and until you get an overview of everything that's there. From our perspective, one of the main things that you're looking to gain from something like this is a level of an assessment of the risk. Trees inherently pose some danger, and whenever you have a public space, there's always going to be some danger involved. So,
Can you use the microphone, please?
oh, okay, is that better? So, what we're looking for is trying to assess everything that's there, get an indication of what it is, and what the recommendations would be to make the park as safe as possible, and number two, to get a sense of the health of the plant material and everything that's there. So this is a web-based system. It's so our technician goes out in the field and with a GPS locator locates each tree. Each tree is provided with an individual unique tag number. That tag number is then located on Google Maps, and you get a you get an overview. I can give me 1 second. I can actually I can go between the two, but I can open it up and give you a sense of what can be done. So you can back, sorry. So in the town, several people can be listed as administrators, which means that they can get into the that they can get in here and they can actually edit and they can change and they can update. So this is the list of all the trees. You see it's put on top of Google Maps, and from here you can go into reports, and from here you'll be able to search whatever it is that needs to be done. So you can create custom fields, and you can get the executive summary. A lot of this exists in the PDF that was presented, and I have 2 copies of the books to give to Debbie. But I can sort of toggle back and forth between these two. So what I did was I cut and pasted some of the highlights of what's in the book, and then, just to give sort of an overview. We had originally estimated it was about 375 trees is what we had contracted with the village to do. That was based town, sorry, and what we had agreed to, and but when we actually got out there in the field, we ended up coming out with 655 total trees that were tagged. There was 43 genera and 66 different species. A total of them came up with a recommendation of some form of pruning of about 394. About 40 were listed as removals, which is about 6%, which is not a huge number, but these were trees that were either dead or presented an immediate risk that they didn't require any further investigation, that visibly they were at risk to be removed. And then there was another 13 that would require what would be a level 2 assessment, risk assessment. So there's a tree risk assessment process that's been organized by the International Society of Arboriculture. It was put together with risk managers and insurance companies and lawyers, and the goal is to be able to assess the actual risk that trees present. Just because a tree has, a dead limb doesn't necessarily mean it's a risk. And some trees that appear to be fine could present some sort of a risk. So what we did as part of this inventory was to do what's called a level 1 assessment, which is strictly a visual assessment of the tree. And in doing that, you can sort of go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, which are, increasing levels of involvement into what needs to be assessed. And so we found that there were 13 trees that needed a higher level, 25 trees altogether that would need a higher level of risk assessment. About 28 needed support systems, and these are all different services that would, or treatments that would be worth considering for the trees as they go forward. So this is sort of just an overview of what the benefits are. Those who operate a large business or institution understand how inventories impacts operations and budgeting. One must know what's there, how much or how many, where it all is before the task can end there. To obtain the greatest benefit from the inventory owners and designees must manage it. So when I say that there's a few people who, so there's 2 ways to view this inventory. There's going to be available a public site, which means that anybody we'll be able to go in and go into this and look at one of these trees and click on it and be able to see what it is. So that means that anybody could go to the park and they could look at tag number 13 and determine that it's a magnolia, 20-inch, semi-mature, and different ones will have different amounts of information. So one of the things that was specified, and I can toggle back here. For instance, there were trees that are memorial trees in the park or dedicated trees that have been put there for some reason by somebody for some event or somebody's passing, and they can all be located and it could easily be turned into like a walk. You could come up with a brochure that says these are memorial trees or these are significant trees. We can search it in multiple ways to come up with, if you wanted to say, find me the 10 biggest trees, we won't put them on a walk, where we want to make sure that people know where they are. It's easy to do from there. You can, and you can then insert that background into this, so that if somebody from the town wants to go search a tree, they can look it up and they can see what it is, and they can gather that information. So some of the services or some of the recommendations that are in there are prescription fertilization, root invigoration. This is in case for trees that are declining. There are trees that should be requiring mulching. I've talked to Debbie that there's some entities and some people who are looking to work at the park on a volunteer basis, and but need some direction, need some guidance, need some places to go. There are things that the community can do, like weeding or watering or mulching or young tree pruning, that kind of thing. So all of those things can be searched. They can be put onto their own map, so that every tree that requires or that should have mulching is put onto a map, and you can direct people to, when you have a volunteer day or when you have some form of event, you can easily find out where those are. So plant health care is are treatments that may need to be done. There's an insect that came into Michigan about 14 years ago called the emerald ash borer, and since 2014, about 14 years, the emerald ash borer has moved from Michigan east, and it's in this area now, and it's killed 100 million ash trees since it's moved here. So one of the things that you want to know is, where are all your ashes? So we can go back into the form and we can filter out just the ash trees, and it'll kick us back. Here's your ash trees, and you can make a decision as to whether or not they're in good condition and whether or not you're interested in trying to treat them preventatively, or you're going to just, you're just going to be aware that those are trees that you're probably going to lose. Once this beetle gets to an area, it kills every ash tree. It's what's happened from Michigan to here, and it's arrived here in the last year and a half. Structural supports are cables, bracing rods, things that are meant to support, structural defects in the tree. Removals. And so one of the things that I spoke with Debbie about that, looking to turn this into is the same department in the DEC that provided the grant that paid for this. They also provide a grant for actual execution of work. So they provide a grant that you can apply for that can that can address tree pruning, safety issues, cabling, bracing, and that kind of stuff. And so the next step is to take a lot of this information, the 40 removals or the 300 prunes, and then turn that back to the DEC and request that grant that will go off of this. They require that this is a stepping stone to applying for that grant. So now that the DEC has provided the town with that grant for the work at this park, they're looking to sort of continue the process to, to get more going forward. One of the things that they also require is that this pulls up potential planting locations. So they'll provide money for tree planting to replace plants that are being removed. And so, at least initially, we can say we have 40 locations where trees are being removed, and these are 40 locations where potentially trees could go back. As I said, our technician goes out, he takes the GPS unit, and he enters in all this data. These are some of the attributes that we look for: the species, the diameter, the tree tag, the canopy radius, the age, the height, the class, the condition. These are all things that are now in the system under each tree that's been located. We have to assign each tree a condition, either dead, poor, which means most of the canopy displays dieback, undesirable leaf color and appropriate leaf size, fair, parts of the canopy display, parts of the canopy are showing, ill effects, and then good, the tree condition, are acceptable. And then all of this gets turned into priorities. So you've got all of these different things, and how do you decide what comes first? Well, it gets sorted by priorities, and it's usually done on a 3-year basis. You're looking to address priorities over a course of 3 years. To be addressed in the first year or two. So priority 1 is what you would look to deal with in the first year to 2. So what we're going to look to do is to turn this into information that can then go into the grant and lead towards getting an award to help address them. And then in years 2 to 3, you're going at the second priorities, and year 3, you're going into the lower of the priorities. So there's charts in the book, and there's charts on the website that show every tree. So as an example, this is the tree risk mitigation, 13 trees, and it gives you the tree ID, the species, the diameter, and then the risk rating, and then what the reasons are why we have it marked for assessment. So you take this table that's in the book of the 13 trees that need the assessment, and you can go back into the map and just click the trees that need assessment, and it gives you a map of where the 13 trees are. So they're easily identifiable. You know where to go find them, and anybody could go look at them. So if we say these 13 trees need assessment, it's easy to hand it off to somebody and say, go take a look at it, and you'll see exactly what it is that we're talking about or what we're looking at. There's a table that shows the different species. Overall, there was 66 species out of the 665 trees. So it's really a pretty good diversity of species out there, which is something that you're looking for. This would be the overall tree inventory on the west side. We sort of cut it into 2 parts because the park is long, and this would be the overall inventory on the east side. So this is where all the trees are located on here. Overall, 490 of the trees were in a good condition, which is good. You've got a fairly low number that were dead and a fairly low number that were in poor. But these fair and these poor trees can account for a lot of headaches. One tree falling in a park is, can set off a whole series of bad events. In here, there's what's we put this in here for, it's required in most inventories. But if you go to, if I go back to this in here, and we go to tree number 128, it's an American elm, 13-inch. So the tree asset value is the Certified Nursery and Landscape tree value system. It's sort of the industry standard for assessing the value of a tree. There's numerous reasons for assessing a value. It can be if the tree's ever damaged. It can be a benefit. So this is a trunk formula. It's equating the value as if you had to replace the tree in a comparable size. So if you had to go out and replace a 13-inch tree, this is the formula that's used in litigation when somebody takes down somebody else's tree, or runs their car off the road and damages somebody's tree. The replacement cost is $3,120. It puts a monetary value on the trees, which can be a little bit weird, but they carry an inherent value. People go, if there were no trees at the park, people wouldn't go to the park. They're a major component part of any open space and public space, and so they do provide a value, and so it's one of the things that gets captured in there. So when we put in the details of each tree, the species, the diameter, the size, the condition, that spits out the value. So that's why you'll see that value keep popping up on these, and these are the factors that go into estimating that value. So you're going to see that in there, and that's what that's there for. So again, the pruning recommendations, it's in a table like this, and it'll go by the tree. It's sorted by the priority ones first, and if you so when you get to this map, it'll show down at the left corner, the red are priority 1, the tan are priority 2, and the yellow are priority 3. So again, it can be verified in the field. You can go out and look and see exactly what it is that that's requiring the pruning. And these are priority 1 either because there's something with the tree, or most likely because there's something with a potential risk or a potential target. Either they're along the road, or their tree's in severe condition, or it's over a bench, or it's presenting some higher level of risk than a small tree out here in the middle of the field wouldn't necessarily it wouldn't carry the same risk rating. Same thing, there'll be a table for the tree removal recommendations in the tree care priority list. It'll be sorted that way, and you can get a map that has this. You can get a map that you can print, or you can just log in. I don't know who's going to be the administrator in the town, but yeah. So we'll provide for 1 or 2 people to administer. We don't want you have to have a fairly small number of people that can go in and administer it, and it can be critical to. You can really get a lot out of this if you are able to keep it updated, because what happens is so you go out this fall and you prune 50 of the priority 1 trees that are pruned, whatever circumstances, a storm or something falls out, God forbid you end up with some liability or something about this, you now have a means of showing your work history on those plants. So you have the ability to say, we pruned it in 2012 and 2008. It's not like it was ignored. It's not like it wasn't paid attention to. We identified it and we treated it, and you're in a lot better position than if you have you were unaware. You didn't know anything about it. You had no clue that there was an issue. So there's a section on dedicated or memorial trees. This could be this is an area that has a lot of potential. This could be a place where you could encourage people to donate trees. You could get into a tree fund where people want to plant trees there for loved ones or for significant people in town, or for local organizations, Rotary clubs, Boy Scouts, whoever, and they can then, those trees can then be searched online. And once you have them all, you can filter it. You can go in and click dedicated trees or memorial trees or significant trees. And like I said, that screenshot, that map is then the blueprint for creating a walking tour, that kind of thing. There's also the ability to to put, if you want to put a marker on them, we can put a QR reader, which is a little QR code, so that people can take their smartphone and they can click it and they can read about it. If you do that, so the simplest thing that we do with those is we link those to a Virginia Tech website. Has really good fact sheets on tree species, and so it can link to, they click it and it opens up and it tells them everything about a river birch. And so you can make it sort of an interactive walkthrough. If you wanted to make it things that were not tree related, like, something about the person, you would probably have to, that would probably be a lot of, entry on your own type of thing. So this is the login. I assume everybody's intimating that Debbie's the one that is going to be, but so you'll get a login. We already have this with Rytown Park.
The Friends of Crawford Park, I would want them to have
Okay.
administrative rights as well,
Yeah.
and they will really work with us.
Yeah, and so this is the Arborscope is our proprietary software, and it does carry a licensing. It's $500 a year to cover upgrades and to cover the cost of it, because we already. But so it's a single account. So because Crawford Park has it now, Rytown Park actually is under the same code. So they can continue to go in and adjust those. And so this is, I cut and pasted this. I didn't know if I could get online, but this is how you would get through to there, and you get to these summaries. And these are this is sort of the basic risk assessment. Within the book, there's a lot of technical reports which cover, so anything that's brought up is pretty much described in greater detail. So, this is, inside baseball for us, like tree risk assessment, but like we throw out tree risk assessment, but we put in information that explains what that is. So you know exactly what it is that we're talking about, and how we get to that. The tree risk qualification is a 3-year qualification. It's a 3-day course and test, and you have to redo it every 3 years. Everybody that we have work on this has that qualification. So whoever, in this case it was Jeremy who did this, he's been doing this for a long time, and he did this tree risk qualification on every this tree risk assessment on every tree that he encountered in the field. So these are what the typical tags look like. The center one, the brass one, is the one that we tend to stick with. Oddly enough, it's just the one that the squirrels don't destroy. We use the blue ones in Rytown Park, and the squirrels have pretty much destroyed, maybe 15% of them. And you can see the QR tag as well. So it's a different tag. The QR tags are, we don't use them on every tree because they need to be they need to be specifically designed for the tree. So typically we use them for, like I said, dedicated trees, specimen trees, whatever the criteria is that you decide to go with. And so this is, so when you open, it, this is what the typical tree page will look like. This is tree number 4. This isn't at the park. This is someplace else. So this is tree ID 412. It's a little leaf linden. Scientific name, medium size, the diameter, the size, and then in here you'll have the tree care priorities, what's recommended, and what have you. And then in here, this is on PowerPoint, so I can't open it, but you can add in additional information, images, recommendations, and the tree info. So like I said, you can, depending on, how much information you put in as it goes forward, depends how much information you can accumulate about any given tree on the property. And so in here, this is where you would enter where you would edit the information and how you make reports.
I think we could go to Q&A.
Yep, I'm sorry.
So,
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
I think it was very impressive.
Yeah, it's a really useful tool, and so the DEC Urban Forestry Division is comprised of just some really great people, and they've really pushed this over the years, that this is a great way to manage your urban forest. And so it's great that they provide the grant, and it's great that we're able to execute it for you.
And this was terrific.
Thank you.
Trevor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
And
coming.
I'm-
What are our next steps?
So the next step is that
We need to get
so
more
so
money, right?
well, the one thing that's not captured here is and I could have Jeremy do it, but he doesn't always do it. Is that you've got 40 trees that are recommended for removal. We need to sort of get a ballpark of what's involved in taking those out. And I spoke with Debbie over the weekend about, us providing the sort of the meat so that you have enough information to apply for the next grant. And, from Debbie's conversations with the people at the DEC, they're eager for us to get it in. So that's the next stage, is us trying to get some idea of what we should go and ask for. Correct?
Correct. And really quickly.
Yes. Oh, I thought there was another question. Really quickly. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.
What
There-
I'm saying is that I was really looking forward to working on the next grant.
Yeah. Yep. So can I leave these with you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that should bring us down to Proposal Pro, Debbie. Right?
Yes.
Resolution D. You want to tell us what that's about? And
I don't want to do the Central Tree Service.
You're gonna go back and do the tree service after this.
Proposal Pro?
Proposal Pro.
So we're coming to the conclusion of several grants that were originally written by grant writer Judy Eisenberg of Proposal Pro, Inc. Judy had left us to take a full-time job, and so we did not renew our consulting contract with her for 2018. But at this point, she has a couple of days a week free, and the interest in assisting us once again. And so I have put on the agenda a resolution to re-engage Proposal Pro at the rate of $75 per hour, not to exceed $15,000 a year. I have no intention of spending that in the immediate term, but I thought since there's a number of months between now and the end of the year that we might give ourselves some space. Specifically, as you heard Trevor refer to it, the DEC has the next round urban forestry grants. That round is open, and I am preparing to, having completed our inventory, to now apply for a tree maintenance grant and also a tree planting grant. And it's Judy's estimation that she should be able to turn that around in half the time it took her to write the first grant, because we'll be reusing a lot of the material for the next grant. And there's a great deal of enthusiasm both with the Friends of Crawford Park and also with the readers of the grant for us to reapply. I've also asked, there's also a zero emissions vehicle grant that Judy wrote for us successfully, and there's another round for that grant as well. And so she will be reapplying, if engaged, she'll be reapplying for us, so that when we complete our Crawford Park renovation, at the moment we have 2 vehicles, a double vehicle station, electronic charging station, and the hope would be that we would get a grant and be able to install 2 at that point. And lastly, there's the Community Development Block Grant for Crawford Park that we would like to enter, and we do not have a grant writer engaged for that. And since she wrote our last CDBG grant, we are going to repurpose a lot of the material that was written for the last grant and turn that around and slide in under the wire for our June 29th deadline.
Well, that's the that's the resolution that we had passed earlier.
Correct.
Right. So basically, we're talking about potentially 4 separate grants, one for the EV station, one for the Crawford Park CDBG application, and 2 for the Crawford Park maintenance and planting.
Yeah, it's not clear to me if the maintenance and planting is one grant or 2 separate grants. We'll
Right.
just
How much was the grant that resulted in the inventory?
Greg, can you help us with that? 16,000.
16,000. So I would guess that since the inventory was that, the cost of the, if we should get the grant, that would be a much larger grant probably
Yes.
for the maintenance, for all of the things that he was talking about with level 1, level 2, level 3, and then planting, right?
Yes,
So that's
I would
even more
agree.
substantial.
Yes, I would.
And the
And I'm-
DEC is enthusiastic because we've already done this. Good.
Quickly and successfully. In the immediate term, I would expect that we would probably be spending less than $12,000 on the grants that I've just discussed.
With a pretty good size return. And since we've gotten a lot, we've gotten good feedback on it. So the resolution for, to retain Proposal Pro, may I have a motion and a second?
So moved. I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll. And we note that Councilwoman Lindsay Jackson had to leave. So we're down 1.
Okay,
So call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi,
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod,
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter,
Yes.
and Supervisor Zuckerman.
Yes. And while we're doing resolutions, the Central Tree Service resolution, this is the piggyback on top of the Rybrook contract. And at the Rye-Town Park Commission earlier this evening, we approved the same basic resolution, piggybacking on Rybrook. And Benny Salonicho had a suggestion. I think that, would that apply? Where's Jeff? Jeff, should we modify the resolution for this one in conformance with the one for Rye-Town Park?
Yeah, I mean, the arborist and the
Yeah,
tree trimmer should not be the same.
right. So we take out periodic arborist, because Bartlett is our arborist and Central Tree is our tree trimmer.
Periodic arborist is in the first whereas. And, do you see it? There? In the
Yes,
need of a
that's
periodic
right,
arborist?
yeah.
Right. And then not to exceed is at the bottom of that resolution.
Okay. May I have a motion and a second as amended?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. And Greg, I'm sorry, we skipped over you. Let's do Greg. Which one is, where are we on that? Update this, the 2018 summer internship program.
Sure, thank you. Happy to provide a brief update on the 7th annual summer internship program for youth in the town. Two things before we kind of take a look at some of the 4 pages handouts in front of you. Number one, just want you to kind of keep in mind the basic objectives of the program is just not about getting the youth a job. It goes back to that first week that they spend in the job readiness training, learning how to get a job. And if you recall, a number of years ago, John Rivas, one of the members here in the community at the time of the NAACP, was very strong on saying he didn't feel that was coming across in the high school curriculum. So we built that in, and that's that first week. So it's really 2 objectives. One is helping the youth learn how to get a job, and then helping them with that specific job for the summer. The second thing I'd ask you to keep in mind is here we are at June 19th. We probably have about 11 more days before it's final at the end of June. Some youth sometimes apply to numerous jobs and try to get a job, and they kind of drop out. And so we're still in a little flux, but this is a pretty good picture, I think, for this year. So if I might ask you to take a look at the handout. The first handout, just simply trying to point out that while the town budget has $15,000 for youth outreach and the internship program, we're trying to keep it below that 15 because during the course of the year, there are other internships that the town has besides just the summer one. So we should, when all's said and done, we should come in around 12.2. The second page outlines, at the moment, the 22 youth who have applied. This is best summer ever, the most we've ever had. A couple of things might be attributable. One is a couple of folks are coming back. They really have enjoyed it, have benefited. Their parents and guardians have sent emails saying, please take my child. I think it also may be an indication that I think the economy might be doing strong. So people are kind of excited about getting jobs. Without going into details, I think you could see that most of the residents are from Portchester, so the program is supportive of those who live in Portchester, live in the town, as well as those who go to school in the town. So you'll see one person doesn't actually live in the town, but goes to school at Portchester. So we have 22 students.
Was she there last year, Greg?
No, she was
No?
not. Thank you. And you can see the grades completed vary from, they will have completed in, I guess, a couple of days now, everything from 9th grade through to 12th grade. The next page gives you a little peek into the job readiness workshop. So those 4 basic skills: how to find the job, how to write up your resume or complete a job application, how to conduct yourself on an interview, and lastly, on-the-job performance. Those are the four main ingredients of the job readiness workshop. And we have it in the mornings, and thankfully a wonderful facility at the Salvation Army. And it's just in the mornings, 9:30 to 12:30. The next page gives you a sense of, on the last page of the workshop, is the matching. It's I guess like we see sometimes on TV for the medical students trying to match with a hospital. So this is a little bit of a speed dating, where thankfully the good folks at the Port Chester Senior Center have enabled us to use the room. So there's an employer sitting at each table, and they have about 7 minutes to interview the students. And the student interviews as well the employer, and each identify whether they would really love to work there, whether they might work there, or no way they want to work there, and vice versa with the employer. And so our job during the next week really is to match ideally everybody who really wants to work with somebody with the employer that they really want to work with. It's always a challenge. God bless Excel worksheets, able to get it through. But you'll see we have at the moment 15 employers, but you'll see that some of the employers are willing to take more than one intern, so there are 21 jobs, but we do have 22 students. But as I say, I think we're just trying, we have 11 days to get to the final line on that and see how that works out. So that's where we are. Again, thank you so much for the support. I've enjoyed working on it, both from the planning end as well as from the learning end, and we clearly have learned things from the students as well. So it's been very good, and again, kudos to the town for supporting it every year.
Thank you, Greg. And why don't you give a shout out to those people who work with you in this? I know you don't work alone.
Do not work alone. Two wonderful people we've met over the years, Dave Thomas and Alejandro Payan, who have done yeoman's work in reaching out to students as well as reaching out to the employers.
Thank you. Questions from the council?
So
No questions.
hopefully we'll make all 22 students happy and stay within the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Greg.
Okay. Tony, are we officially down to H? We finished our skipping around, I think.
Oh, okay. Back on track.
Back on track, okay. The next two items, we've done this before, the IMA with the county for a stormwater management study, and an IMA with the town of the village of Rybrook and the Port Chester School District, the three-part IMA for funding. This was originally conceived back in 2016. It was approved, but Rybrook was the lead agency at the time, and they had some problems with the wording of the county contract having to deal with what they call the discretionary funding policy. So basically, to make a very long story short, in fact, a story that lasts for 2 years, the town of Rye is becoming the lead agency, and we don't have any. Even though I believe the problems were worked out with the county with the new administration, the town of Rye is going to be the lead municipality in this. And one reason, in addition to the discretionary funding policy, is that, as was mentioned earlier, we also have received a similar grant from the state of New York through the consolidated funding application and the community development block grant that we will be getting funding from the state, and Greg is our grant administrator for that. The contract has been entered into previously with Dolph Rothfeld, and basically, the way we're hoping this would work is that the primary funding is going to come through the CDBG, and our local match will come through a combination of the county funding and our own funding that we're committed to through the three-way agreement. So what that means is that if all works as we're planning, and sometimes things don't go exactly to plan, if it works as it's planned, then the Village of Rybrook, the Town of Rye, and the Portchester School District will be paying less money than under the original plan for our share, and also the county will be paying less money under the original plan, because we still have to pay something, and the county share will be less, and we're getting money from different sources. And I think what makes this important is hopefully we're going to get buy-in from both the state and the county in the future, because this is a study grant. And the study grant, if successful, will be followed up by an application for money to do the actual work for whatever the study shows, which is very similar to the presentation we just saw on the trees. First, we had a study done, and now we're applying to get the work itself done. So that is the background.
Could everybody just refresh their agenda?
Why?
There's a second resolution, two
Pardon?
resolutions. One's the tri-party,
Right.
and the other one is with the county.
Right.
County one wasn't on.
County one was not on there. Is it on there now?
Yeah,
Okay. So,
it's J. The new one is J.
I don't know. Okay, tell me how to refresh it then. Go back?
Hit back,
And then back again?
and then you'll get a screen that looks like this.
I did, I went back
And
into
then
it.
hit the little refresh button.
No. Hit back, and then hit the refer, that one here.
Okay. Man, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yes, you can. I know.
And you know about dogs.
I know about dogs. You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Okay. Okay, let's do J first. To enter into IMA with the county. This is the one that I saw in hard copy, correct, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. This is the same. Basically, authorizing the supervisor to enter into an IMA with Westchester County regarding stormwater management, and it goes through the, some of the history and why we're doing it. And it's interesting because when I was a consultant to the chairman of the Board of Legislators, I was there when the stormwater reconnaissance plan was approved. And that's the plan, the overall plan for the county. There are different areas. We're obviously in the Blind Brook stormwater reconnaissance plan, but different areas have different plans. And this is consistent, obviously, with the plan that was recommended by the Stormwater Advisory Board to the Board of Legislators. And anyway, any questions about this? I know former Councilman Billy Villanova was heavily involved even before I became supervisor, and working with former Town Council Paul Noto to try to get this through the legislature at that time. And hopefully when this is done, this will then go to the Board of Legislators and the county attorney for approval by the county legislature. Okay, so, any further questions? May I have a motion and a second then?
So moved.
A second.
Please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. And the second IMA is with the Town of Rye, Village of Rybrook, and the Portchester School District that basically commits the Village of Rybrook to fund 50% of the local share, and each of the Town of Rye and the Portchester School District to fund 12.5%, up to 12.5% each, up to, I think it's $12,500. And as I said, hopefully, that amount will be much smaller when we get reimbursed by the state through CDBG. And this is basically the same agreement that we had passed in 2016, the difference being that the Town of Rye is now the lead. And we have to advance the money and get reimbursed by the village and the school district. And by the way, this basically, I know everybody knows this, but for those viewing, this project applies to Avon Circle primarily in Rye Brook. And that's why the village is so involved in it, because there have been tremendous flooding conditions there through the various storms. And this hopefully will alleviate that. And the flooding, the reason the Portchester School District is involved is because there is substantial flooding on the Portchester Middle School fields and makes them unplayable. So, at any rate, did I have a motion and a second on this?
So moved.
Second.
If no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. And our last resolution is to authorize the Town of Rye to challenge the 2018 assessment at Rye Town Park. We did this last year. The assessment has not changed year to year, but we're filing it again to preserve our rights. As most of you know, certainly everybody on this council knows, but those viewing at home, there was a legal dispute between the City of Rye and the Town of Rye and the Rye Town Park Commission regarding the taxation primarily of the restaurant at Rye Town Park. And the only thing I'll say about this at this time is that we are working on a settlement of that issue. But in the meantime, we would like to challenge the current assessment of not only the restaurant, but the entire park, which we believe is overassessed and should be tax exempt. So, any questions on that? This retains Dan Tartaglia, who represented the town last year in filing this grievance. This is just filing the grievance. This is not a court case at this time, and hopefully this will all be resolved in an overall settlement of the tax issue. Any questions?
No.
If not, may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilperson Nardi?
Yes.
Councilperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Councilperson Baxter?
Yes.
And Supervisor Zuckerman?
Yes. That concludes our resolution portion. Our reports, we have the Town of Rye financials. David, do you want to address anything with that? And you don't have to tell us how you're going to set up the charitable reserve fund yet?
No. Not ready for that. I just want to highlight a couple things with the tax receivables summary report through May. We are trending behind in collections for the class of 2017, as I refer to it. Each year, there's a new class of in rem. That means they've been in lien for 2 years, and so the next class is July 31st, 2018. which appears to be a bigger class than 2017 by about 50%. We're trending about 500,000 behind in collections on the class of 17. What I will do is next month, I'm going to add commentary to the report and also include it in the package in advance, so you have it, and we'll save some trees. But on page 2 of the in-rem detail, there are 19 properties from the class of 17. 7 have paid, which is on the next page. 7 of the 26 have paid through May 31st. Last year at the same time, just looking here, only 3 were unpaid, 19 were paid at this point. So that's what I'm saying, we're significantly behind. I'll be updating the in-rem attorney, Dan Tartaglia, and asking for some detail of the class of 17 that remains outstanding. They really are lagging at this point. And that is significant because the new class comes in and we have make-whole numbers in October, so we do need to receive those funds.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions?
No question.
Nope. All right, Davey, thank you very much. We don't have that resolution on the bank? We're not doing that tonight?
No.
Okay.
Just add it if you would like to do that. It's just one bank, but I don't.
It's up to the controller as to whether you want to do it or not.
It's just going to be a new depository that we're going to distribute for the research.
Okay, so we'll do it next month. Let's make sure it's on the agenda, or a determination that it's not going to be on the agenda.
Let's assume it's on the agenda, please.
It's easier to take it off. Mr. Receiver of Taxes.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and members of the Town Council. Nicholas Mecca, Tax Receiver, Portchester, New York. Just reminding everybody, if you're responsible for your village tax, the first installment is due for Rybrook and Portchester by June 30th. Now, to answer the question that many people ask, because it falls on a weekend, you can come into the office on Monday with no penalty. You cannot mail it in or anything else, but you can come physically into the office on Monday and pay your taxes. And as far as the in-rem, I will be working very closely with Mr. Burns to get that back on track, because it is a little bit off track, and we're going to get that back. So anybody out there that has tax problems, please work on them as quick as you can, because it's a problem. Any questions?
Nick, we passed tonight the Charitable Reserve Fund resolution and local law. Now, I have kind of lightheartedly said that, you know, to Davey about setting up the account in the books, about doing that. I am guessing that very few people have inquired about making a charitable deduction instead of paying their tax. However, since we did pass the local law and the resolution, they can in fact do that for their village tax for the village of Rybrook, because Rybrook passed a local law permitting that. The village of Portchester did not. So people who wish to pay their village of Rybrook tax to the charitable fund and possibly get a charitable deduction should contact both the village of Rybrook and Mr. Mecca, who will field the inquiries and give any appropriate answer. I'm not sure that anybody's going to do it, Nick.
Well,
but
we
but
are studying
we are
the
set up for it.
mechanism right now to see just
Right.
exactly how it's done. and who is responsible and who's actually doing the actual bookkeeping records.
Well-
We are studying that right now, and hopefully we'll have an answer very
I know,
soon.
and I know that you're getting guidance from the Receivers Association, I'm sure.
Yes, we are.
Okay, it is a complicated situation, but I just wanted to put it out there for the residents, especially of Rybrook, who need to pay their village taxes within the next 2 weeks.
Yes, okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Town Clerk, you have filed your report. Do you have anything you wish to add?
Nothing to add.
Nothing?
Thanks.
The Superintendent of Highways is not with us today. Can we just get an update on the bridge grant, either Tommy or Debbie? Do we have anything new on that?
God, Debbie, you're good at it.
The Hillside Avenue Bridge.
We're basically waiting for the state, aren't we, for the approvals?
Our monthly meeting where we're really going to get an update is tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Councilman Nardi will be attending. I may be able to make it on the late side. I have a previous meeting. In addition to that, Tom, can you help me remember the exact date of there'll be a public meeting at the Village of Mamaroneck at the end of this month, I believe.
Yeah, I
Is
have
the
it in my
30th?
calendar. I'll tell you in 2 seconds. It should be in my calendar. Oh, shoot, give me a second. I thought it was in July.
Well, while you're looking it up, I'll just fill in
I
that.
have July 30th.
July 30th.
Yeah.
Thank you. At Village, at
At-
the Mamaroneck Village Courthouse.
Yeah.
There'll be a public meeting about the progress that's being made,
And that's at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
And so far, we have a pretty strict timeline, and we are right on the money, as far as I can tell.
My compliments to the Village of Mamaroneck on that. I think they're doing an excellent job as the lead agency for that project.
Yeah, tomorrow is the big meeting, yeah.
All right. And that's it. Comments from council persons. Anybody want to speak on any subject?
I'll just quickly say that our Sustainability Committee
I was
had
waiting
their
for that.
first 2 events over the last 2 months. Back in May, we had 2 speakers talk about healthy soil and composting, and it was very well attended for our first event. We had about 40 people at the Portchester Senior Center. And just this past Saturday, we had our first co-sponsored partnership event with the City of Rye's Sustainability Committee at Rye Town Park. We had the Wiggle Worm lady, who brought a lot of nice, neat worms for kids to play with, and it was dirty, and it was fun, and very educational, and at the end, the kids got to play with them, and I think everybody learned a lot about composting and healthy gardening. So we've talked about the fact that our mission really as a town sustainability committee is educational outreach, and programs like this really, I think, are beneficial for everybody. So thanks to Debbie and all the members of the committee who worked hard to put this together, and we're off and running, and we're looking forward to our next event, hopefully in the fall.
The Getty Wall, you want to mention that we're out to the Getty Wall?
Well, now that you brought it up, yes, we are out to bid on the Gedney Wall. It's out to bid. We received the bids, and we're looking into them. We're not certain that the low bidder is a qualified bidder. Mr. Rotfeld is investigating that, and I think, Jeff, you need to be in touch with him, please, on that, to discuss the parameters. We also had a bid opening for Crawford Mansion, and it was disappointing. We didn't get as many bids as we wanted, and we're going out to bid again. The bids we got were higher than we expected, and we're rebidding the project, but we're doing it on a much shorter timeline, and the architect is reaching out to other potential contractors to submit bids. So we're hopeful that in a possibly by next month, we will have a new bid opening and award a contract.
And the demolition at Crawford Park's continuing, so they're getting everything prepared. So they even found an old elevator in the mansion, but it's not one that we can use, so,
And
but
that's
it's,
in addition to the fireplace they found.
and the fireplace too that they found, yes.
You never know what you find when you're taking walls down.
So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing old place.
Yep.
So, anything?
Yeah.
Anything else? Tony, I think I attended a sustainability meeting last week, and I think it was terrific. And they're doing a food scrap program now. And the Village of Portchester is actively looking into it. The Village of Rybrook has already started one, and I picked up my food scrap bucket and filled my first one, although I must say I haven't brought it to the compost place yet. It's sitting in the bigger bucket in my garage, just waiting to be taken to Rybrook Village Hall. Yes, before I get complaints.
Scarsdale do something like that?
Scarsdale, yes. At the Municipal Officials Association a few months ago, the Village of Scarsdale was the originator, as far as I know, of municipalities. Several schools have been doing this. I know Ashley Weldy mentioned, who's a Blind Brook school trustee and a member of our sustainability committee, mentioned that this program has been ongoing for a while in the Blind Brook schools. And now Portchester is looking to bring it into the Village of Portchester. So, all good things. And I just wanted to say that Rybrook Day was last Saturday, and of course the scene of Rybrook Day was, or the location of Rybrook Day was Crawford Park. The park looked absolutely magnificent. We got lots and lots of compliments, and thank you for all of those who were there. And we had a lot of fun. The kids had a lot of fun, and Rybrook put on a really good day, as they always do. And Mayor Rosenberg is to be commended for that, and Village Administrator Chris Bradbury did a wonderful job. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. With that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.